Today I'm going to tell you about Linda. Linda was in her early 60s. She was a widow. She'd been married to her husband Frank for 32 years, but he was gone, and she continued on. She was a good woman, an intelligent, kind woman, but deep under the surface, her life was dominated by fear and anxiety. See, Frank had been a police officer, and her mind had been filled for years with his warnings about all of the bad things that he saw in the world as a cop. That's part of what happens when you're a cop. That he always told her, do not trust people. They're sickos. Always be alert. The world is not safe. And she believed that. That became a ground of just her way of seeing the world. She never necessarily said it out loud or even realized that she was saying it in her head. But she always had that vibe behind her that the world is dangerous and I am all alone in it. And that affected her deeply. It meant that she stopped going out and being with people. Like, she stopped accepting invitations to go places with people. She started to prefer only the familiar things. She started even to prefer not even leaving her own house if she could manage it. Her blinds were always drawn. She stopped paying attention to her friends. She stopped going to church. And she became a fearful, small person, living an anxiety-filled, small life. Because what she saw in the world was danger and death, and she knew that she could not handle it. Now I want to stop here, pause a little bit, because this story isn't just about Linda. I imagine that this belief has a place somewhere in your mind, a big place, a small place. You can never be sure. But do you notice how it affects you? How it causes you to act that I am always in danger and I always need to be protecting myself. It makes us live smaller and weaker and more withdrawn and more cut off. And that's not the only belief that can cause that. There's a lot of core beliefs that people have that are terrible for them, such as, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worth loving, or I'm all alone, or I'm not important, I don't matter. People don't want me around. In psychology, these are called core beliefs. The things that you've been taught to think, generally from your upbringing or other factors in your environment, and you believe them without even necessarily realizing you believe them. They're just that deep. But they do come out in the little thoughts in your head. Sometimes they actually get formed into sentences that you hear, that when you meet someone, you think, oh, I would love to get to know this person, but I bet they're a sicko. People are terrible. I'm not going to get to know that person. Do you feel this in your life? Does it make you happy? Does it give you joy? I don't think that it does. The words in your mind can destroy you and ruin you. And that's what I want to talk about today, because they don't have to. The story of the gospel, the story that we're gathered around here today, is the story that God has come to us in person to heal our minds and the broken thoughts that live in them, that live in our minds and make us miserable and cause us to act miserably even. We're in the middle of a sermon series called Practicing the Way. And what we're doing in this is taking the fact that Jesus has come to heal us and our minds and to save us from our misery. And that if we like, we can follow him into the new kind of life that he has for us. And he's there to teach us how. And that is tremendously good news. So in this series of Practicing the Way, we are just taking some practical steps of hearing what Jesus has to say, seeing the things that he does, and following that so that we can become the kind of person that he is. Because that's a energizing future that I can imagine for myself. It excites me. Because Jesus, no matter what you think about him, he was not afraid of things. Right? I mean, deep down, he knew that he was okay. And this is a guy who could see his own future. He knew that he was going to be tortured to death, which does not sound very safe. Am I right? But as that was happening, even, he knew that he was perfectly safe in the hands of God. And that's what he taught people, taught us to live by. So that's what we're going to get into today. Finding a way of thinking about the world and about ourselves and about God that will cause us to be more in step with reality and to be in the real world. And I'm going to call it renewing the mind. One thing that I've learned from Jesus, and psychology too, is that people are complex. Human beings are. We have different aspects of us, and most of them aren't even visible because they're all inside of us. When you see me up here, you see my body. Last I checked, this is about 173 pounds of meat and other things. And so you can see my body do things. It's like an iceberg. So look at that picture. There's the tip of the iceberg, of course, and that's what you see. And that's what you're seeing, the tip of my iceberg up here. This is what I am. But there's more to me, right? A lot of me is under the surface and you can't see. On the top, there's my body. But deeper down, you get into my mind. And my mind is really the one telling my body what to do. That the way that I think and the way that I feel is going to have a lot to say about how I live and about how I treat you, how I am with you. And even deeper than that, and we talked about this 3 weeks ago in my last message, there is our spirit. We can sometimes call it our will. The Bible likes to call it our heart. It's about our desires and choices. Whatever it is in us that wants things. That's what the Bible means by spirit. Whatever it is that inside of us that chooses one thing rather than another, that's our spirit, and that's our heart. And we can even see the structure in the center of Jesus' way of living life, that is, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, there the spirit at the bottom, with all of your mind moving up, and with all of your strength in your body. A lot of times when we want to be transformed, when we have a thing about us that we don't like, for example, Linda was a fearful person, and over time she started to want to get out of that. The problem that arises in change is that we don't address all of these. We often only try to address our behavior. Like an alcoholic realizes at some point, hopefully, that drinking is ruining his life and he needs to stop doing it. Now, it's possible to do that and not change these other two things, and if that's the case, it's not going to stick. That wagon is just waiting to be fallen off of. What I get from Jesus, and this is a very important insight, if I want change, I need all of me to change and move forward together. I can't just pick one part of me and change that, because the other two will pop right in and change me back. So today, we're going to look at renewing your mind. Last time we talked about renewing and transforming your spirit, changing the things that you want so that you only want good things. And today, we're going to talk about transforming the mind so that you only think true things. And if you do that, that will go a long way in making your behavior fit the real world. If your mind is in sync with reality, your behavior will be too, quite naturally. A key scripture in all of this series is, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Your mind is sort of a central piece because in your body and mind and spirit, your mind is really the only thing that you have direct control over. I mean, have you noticed that? I mean, somebody can shut my body up in a prison, and that will really affect me. But while I'm in there, my mind can do things. If you ever get a chance, read Viktor Frankl. He was a Holocaust survivor who noticed that some Holocaust survivors couldn't take it, and some could. And he said something famous. He said, "In your mind is where you are truly free." It's the last freedom that you have, that no matter where you are, what ways you're being constrained or things being done to you, you always have the freedom to decide how you're going to think about it. So the mind is an important piece of how we transform the spirit and our body. So this is a big one today, renewing your mind. And that's what the Bible says, that it's by transforming your mind that you transform the rest of you. So that's going to become the question that we're addressing today. How is it that I can partner with God in healing my broken mind? Because, you know what? All of us do. And the first thing I want to say about that is I have two things. And the first one is get to know the real world. You get to know the world as it really is. And that's not easy to do. People see things differently. Some of them are right, some of them are wrong. Most of us are somewhere in between. But the truer and more accurately we see the world around us, the better we're going to navigate it. You know, if I believe gravity exists, and I do, scientist, I'm not going to step off a cliff. Even if someone tells me to, not gonna. Because I know how the real world works. Now, there's a way of thinking about the world that is pretty common. It goes something like this, that the universe exists for no particular reason. It's an accident. That said, I like Big Bang cosmology. Not everybody does, and that's fine. For me, I'm a fan of it. But the idea that it's all without purpose and accident and by randomness, I don't think that's a scientific statement. I think it's a theological statement. They're saying things about, they see a bang and they assume it happened by itself. I'm not there. Whatever you believe about the real world, I invite you to think about this, that someone actually made it happen. I think it'll change things, because if someone made the world happen, they had a reason to do so. And all of these things like meaning and purpose, that becomes meaningful when there's someone who made the world for a reason. We hunger for meaning, for purpose, and I think there's a reason that we do. I think we were made for it. So in this story where everything's an accident, you know what? You're an accident too. It just sort of happened. And again, that's not a scientific statement, it's a theological one. To describe something like evolution or creationism, I'm not even getting into that. To describe it that way as being purposeless is not something you can determine scientifically. Like, it doesn't work that way. So the story goes on, you're meaningless, you're pointless, someday you're going to stop existing, and none of it will have meant anything. So I want you to step back and think about that story. If you lived imagine living in a culture where that's the dominant story about the real world, that people might pretend to believe in angels and silly, happy things, but they know that the real world is like that none of it means anything, that it's all coming apart. And it doesn't matter even that it's coming apart. It doesn't matter that you exist. It doesn't matter that you're going to die. If that's what your culture believes, what kind of people is your culture going to produce? I think, among other things, I think it's going to create people that are terrified of death. Because as far as they can tell, I exist right now, and that's all I've got. And people in our culture are terrified to die. We're terrified of pain, because pain means maybe death is right around the corner. So I think there's a reason that our culture produces alienated, aimless, unhappy, fearful, and anxiety-ridden people. People who will do anything to avoid pain and to avoid death, and to do anything they can, including doing terrible things to anyone else, in order to gain pleasure. Because really, that's the best they can hope for. I think there's a reason our culture produces the kind of people that it does. And I think the problem lies and what we believe the real world is. I come from a community of people called church. We gather around a person named Jesus, and we believe a different story. We have different theological things to say that describe how the real world works. It goes something like this. The world is not a meaningless thing that just happened. It's a project that belongs to someone. In our language, we call that person God. And it's his passion project, that the world is something being created on purpose to be beautiful and to be awesome. And love lies right at the center of all of it. God made us to love us. Part of our story is that God isn't done in this process, that this project has not yet finished. And if you've ever been involved in a construction project or wandered through a construction site, it's messy. When a house is under construction, there's jagged ends sticking out, things that haven't been covered up yet that ought to be covered up. A project in process is messy. And I think we can agree, the world is a bit messy. And it's because it isn't done yet. Here's an important piece, that God made us to partner with him in completing the project. God loves to do things together. If you look deep into God, you'll find that God isn't just one person. It's a togetherness of the Father, Son, and Spirit. We'll get to that some other time. But God, by nature, loves to do things together. And when God made the world, in the old story that we have in Genesis, I think it's a lovely story. In that, God makes things, and then he gives them a job. Always. Why do the stars exist? To shine, and to be awesome, and to give light. They have a purpose. The planets and moons have a purpose. God made the ocean to be wet. God made fish, and he's like, go swim. Your job is to swim, and you know what? Make more fish. A horse, when God created it, he said, you know what, horse? Your job is to run, and to run incredibly, insanely fast, and show the rest of the world what running really looks like, and have a ball while you do it. And while you're at it, make more horses, because horses are great. And when God made humans, God said, I'd like you guys to be joined up with me in continuing to create all of this. You know what? Like if you get a little patch of land, you build a house on it, do stuff with it. Make even more beauty and goodness come out of this beautiful and good thing that I've made for you. My family for generations have been farmers, and we love pulling life out of the dirt. We love it that the dirt is on our side, that it loves to make things that are alive, and we get to partner with it. That's who we are. That's what we are. We're meant to be creators alongside God. And also need to know, God isn't done creating us yet either. We're part of the project. And as any other project in progress, we're still happening. It's rough, we're complicated, we're not fully baked. And we look forward to the day when we will be. When God made the world, he says, this world, it is good. It is very good. You might notice that it doesn't say perfect. In Hebrew thought, there's really not much of a concept of perfect other than God. God made a good world. And you and I, we're working together with God to make it even better, to make it cooler, to take this beautiful, good universe that we live in. I hope we fill it someday. It's all awesome, and we're here to bring out even more awesome out of it, to be co-creators with God. And then the last bit of our story about the world and about ourselves is that we know that God will complete the project. Now, and that takes some faith. It takes trust. Have you ever been given up on? God's not one of those. And we find that in the God that we meet in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. And Jesus is the one of us, the human being who believes that in a way that we all hope to someday. And that's what made him the person that he was and is, and made him fearless, because he knew that death and pain are not the biggest thing in the world. God is. That if your purpose is all bound up in being with God, loving other people, and as you do that, creating all kinds of wonderful things, is there anything that can stop you from that? If God is truly faithful, can death stop that? Can pain stop that? No. Pain matters. I don't like it. I am not going to be fond of the day that I die. It's going to feel a little bit weird to me. I'm going to have some anxiety. I'm going to trust God as much as I can, though. And you know what? If someday I have to give my life to make something good happen, I'm willing to do that, and I hope right now I'm building the courage it takes to be able to do that kind of thing. Because death isn't the end of the world. It can't stop me. There was a time when Linda, in her closed-off house, shuddering inside, and one of the unhelpful things that she did was she spent a lot of time on social media and TV, carefully and completely taking in every bad thing that has ever happened on the planet. And every day she spent a whole lot of time checking in and making sure that she knew every single bad thing that happened across the globe. Somehow that's what news is. It's not news to me that bad things happen. I don't like that they do. But I think there's a bigger story that's not being told. It's not being put into the story of, you know what, yeah, things are messy, and we'd like them to stop being messy, but we're not there yet. If this is the real world, and I propose to you that it is, and I ask you to think about it, if this is the real world, and you believe it, what kind of person will that make you? It'll make you someone like Jesus. And when I look at that guy, I see a pretty impressive dude. I like the idea of being like that. Fearless, always able to say the thing that is true and that needs to be said, because it'll help someone grow. I usually avoid that. I avoid hurting people's feelings by telling them the truth. And it's one of my character flaws. I'm working on it. I'd love to be the kind of person who loves you enough to tell you something you'd rather not hear and that you're going to be mad at me for a few weeks about. I think that's what a good friend is. I'd love to be a good friend. I'm getting closer. I'm getting there. Jesus says this about himself. I think it's worth taking this in. I am the light of the world. If you want to see the world, you need the light. Because just looking at on the surface, you're not going to see everything that you need to see. I'm the light of the world, and no one who follows me stumbles around in the darkness. I provide plenty of light to live in. That's good stuff right there. Because I know about God, because I've weighed the evidence and I've found that there is a mystery that I cannot explain, and I know that the mystery is beautiful. And because of that, it draws me into the Bible, and I learn just a particular way of looking at the world. And it changes everything. I like who I am when I believe this. And that's something that Linda ended up doing as well. That in her house, where she was dark and alone, and shutters drawn, and cataloging every bad thing that's ever happened, one day she was on YouTube and saw a sermon that looked interesting, and she watched it. And it was on the thing that Jesus said more than anything else: fear not. Don't be afraid. It's the phrase he said more often than he said anything else. And he wasn't saying that because, you need to be courageous. He was saying, there is nothing going on here that is worth being afraid of. There are so many other things that are worth your time, and you're wasting it being afraid of little things like pricking your finger or getting mugged or something bad happening to the people that you love. These don't sound like small things. It takes some faith to believe that they are. That nothing can take us away from what actually matters. Being co-creators with God by loving loving God with all our heart, all our mind, all our strength, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. That's what matters. And you know what? Doing that is going to hurt. Sometimes doing that gets you killed. And that's okay. Something that I've learned, I want to give you a little bit of practical to go with this. I've learned, whenever I am afraid, that when I get that the world is a dangerous place, I'm all alone, I'm not safe, when that arises in me, and it does, I've learned to say back to it, fear not. It's not a hard verse to memorize. Fear not. And I also have a saying that I've developed, and it's that the world can hurt me and kill me, but it can never destroy me. That's the sentence that I've learned to use to talk back to my own fear. And I've developed other things like that for all of my false beliefs, the deep down sentences that I say that I learned from parents and step-parents, uncles, and teacher who was sort of mean and grumpy. Things like, nobody wants to have me around. I respond to that with, God made me on purpose. I wasn't around, and he made me be around because he wanted it. The master of the universe, the biggest thing there is, really, really cares about making me be around. And if someone doesn't like me that much, that's their problem. So that's a practice that I'd like to commend to you. I'd like you to start thinking about what your core beliefs are. One thing you can do is go Google the word core beliefs, and you'll find lists of what various core beliefs are. Some of them are good. Some of them are things like, I matter, I'm lovable, people like me. But if you look through these lists of core beliefs, you can find some that are going to resonate with you. Write them down. The beliefs that you have, doing a Google search like that will help you root some out. And then for each one, I'd like you to find a way to talk back to it. Think about this being the real story of the real world. And based on that, what's the truth that you can say back to that weird little sentence that is ruining your life? What can you say back to it? Write it down. Plan it out. When I think this, I'm going to think this right back at it. And I've found that the more that I do that, the more free I become. I say the thing, even in the times when I don't believe it. That quite often, when I'm afraid, I can say, the world can kill me, but it can't destroy me. In the moment, that doesn't feel comforting. Maybe a little. But the more I do that, the more I respond to that thought that way, the more that little bad little thought goes away. It just gets smaller and smaller because I'm exercising the better belief. And it makes my life better. So, yeah, I commend that to you. Get to know the real world. It's awesome. Spoiler, it's awesome. And it's really, really great. And you're a part of it. That God didn't want this whole universe thing to ever be without you. It's good stuff. So you want to get to know the real world. I want to take the scripture that Michael read with us before. Your new life, your real life, it's invisible to spectators. It's under the surface. People can't see it. Most of the time, you can't even see it. The real you, if you want to know the real you, it's hidden with Christ and God. The real you that God made you to be, the person that you're not yet, but you're going to be, the real you is hidden with Christ and God. He is your life. That if you noticed in that story about the real world that we just told, who was the main actor of all of those sentences? It was all God. There is a main character in our story, and it's not us. It's God. So if we want to know ourselves, our real selves, we can't just look at ourselves. We've got to look at God. He is your life. And when Christ shows up again on this earth, you will show up too. I love that. The real you. The glorious you. So in addition to getting to know the real world, there's another step that we need to talk about. You want to get to know the real you. You need to get to know the story of the real world, and you need to start to understand your life, yourself, your experiences in light of what is really happening in the world. You have to understand yourself as a character in the true story of things. And it's controversial for me to say this. You're not going to find the real you by looking inside yourself. Not everyone's going to agree with that, and I understand that, but I think it's important to say. If there was a car in a junkyard full of broken cars, and the car wanted to understand what it meant to be a car, and he looked at himself, he would see a pile of rusted metal that sits still. You're not going to know the real you by looking at a broken version of yourself. There's only so much you can know about a building that is still being built. If you want to know what a building is for, or what a car is for, you got to ask the person who's making it. Because they're the ones who know. They're the ones whose project it is. They're the ones who have a purpose for the thing that they're making. If you want to know the real you, look into God's heart. It's why the gospel of Jesus Christ is important. It's why the Bible is important. I know the Bible's difficult, but it tells a particular story about who you are, and I would like to contend that it is a good story. It is a great story about how you mean something and you matter, and you're here for a reason, and nothing can take that away from you. That's where you're going to find yourself. There's a method for doing this. As I was growing up, there was a popular tool or idea, and it was so simple it fit on a bracelet. It was WWJD. It's not a web address. It's an acronym for what would Jesus do? And it was a way of thinking of every point in your life and every decision that you make. Ask that question: what is it that Jesus would do here? And I think WWJD is pretty good, but I'd like to go a little further with it and go a little deeper with it. What I like doesn't fit on a bracelet quite as well. It's WWJDIHWM. I know, it's a little more clunky. What would Jesus do if he were me? The issue with what would Jesus do is that he's not me. We're not all going to become a first century carpenter who has a beard and apparently kind of longish hair and speaks Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic. Jesus never asked us to be him. Jesus wants us to be us. And the way we do that is to look at him, and we have some just objective facts of history that we can look at. Look at him, and from there we can extrapolate. You know, if Jesus were me, I'm a middle-aged, married man with some kids. Some of them are out of the house, some of them are in. I make a certain amount of money. I'm a technical writer. I have a job. I have certain gifts. I have certain weaknesses. If Jesus was that kind of person rather than who he was, what would he do? And the reason for that is that Jesus is an expression of God's character in that particular person named Jesus. The one you're meant to be is the person where God's character expresses itself in you through your own set of unique gifts and talents, flaws even, habits, the ways that you treat people, and all of us is going to be different. So that's why I think this question is important. What would Jesus do if he were me in my situation? Because you know what? The Jesus we know in the Gospels was not. He was a guy living at a certain time in a certain place, and he lived in that situation. He responded well to the situation that he was in. But it's not our situation. There's like a step of interpretation that we need to do. That's also something that Linda did. that she heard this sermon on YouTube about fear not, and honestly, it made her mad. A lot of times when someone says, you know what, you think you know the real world, but you don't. Here's what it is. That's kind of insulting. I get that. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. But she heard that, fear not. It made her go back to her Bible a little bit and learn about this Jesus person. And she saw courage in him. She saw bravery and strength in the face of dangers that she had certainly never faced and probably never would. He was courageous and good. He was good enough to be courageous in the cause of good. And she was impressed by that. And she liked it. And she started to imagine this. What would Jesus do if he was a widow in her mid-60s without her husband around to keep her safe? What would he do? And that just became a question inside of her that bounced around. And she started to kind of get an idea. And she started imagining a 60-something old lady. No, I don't mean old lady. I'm going to take that back. I've gotten in trouble for that before. A 60-years young woman without a husband, with a little house, with some neighbors. If that person wasn't afraid, what would that person look like? And she started to get a vision of that. And here's the thing, she fell in love with that person. The person that God was turning her into. And that's something that I need to give to you today, that you want to get a very clear vision of what Jesus would do with your life if he were you. Start to think of that as the person that you're becoming. Get a clearer and clearer vision of that over time. This is the work of a lifetime. But here's the thing. You got to fall in love with that person that you're becoming. And I think all of us know that experience at least a little bit. And we all know that it's a little bit of a miracle. And that's the thing. This doesn't happen because we try really hard. This happens because a gift has been given to us. And that it just takes time to receive the gift and to have it work itself through our mind and our spirit and in our behavior. This is all a miracle of God. And part of that miracle involves you falling in love with the person that God made you to be. And it's a miracle that God is eager to make happen with you. It'll take time, but he's happy to make it happen for you. Your real life, the real you. That's how you change your mind. And with Linda, her story ends well. She fell in love with this idea of herself as a brave person who wasn't afraid of things and wasn't always worried about things. And a day came when a neighbor popped over. This was someone she had met before, a young lady named Jenna. And she said, I have a burst pipe in my house. I really, really need some help. Now, Linda had an instinctive reaction to that. Like, first of all, she didn't even want to open the door. But the young lady looked like she was really in need. So she opened it, she listened. She had the instinct to say, no, I can't help you. I'm just an old lady. I can't help. I'm not useful. That was her instinct. But she had that thought pushing back in her mind. I can do stuff. I matter. There's someone who needs to be loved. I can do that. I can't fix broken pipes, but I can do what I can. And that ended up winning because that had just been percolating in her soul for so long. And she went over and helped the friends see what the problem was, and they called a plumber. I mean, that was all that they had to do. But they ended up sitting around and having tea and talking. And it was something she had missed. She didn't realize how much she missed that just being with people. There's always a chance that person's going to be a sicko and is going to try to chop you into pieces. But they also might not. And even if they did, it's all right. That's a very counterintuitive thing that I get from the gospel. None of this that I'm afraid of is worth being afraid of. Fear not. And that was something that Linda learned that day. And that day, her life began to open up and stopped being small, stopped being so isolated and stilted. And she started to see beauty in the world and beauty in people. And what that's called is living in reality. Because at the end of the day, the world, the universe is a beautiful place. And it's becoming a good place. That's always been what the process has been about. It's not there yet. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. We're a project being worked by someone who can be trusted to finish. That's the real world. That's the real you. As we transition back into a time of worship, I can invite the band to come on up. We're going to talk about the Eucharist. And what the Eucharist is, it's a reminder of that miracle that we need from God, where we fall in love with Him, where we fall in love with the person that God is making us into. It's not something you can make happen. I've tried to fall in love with people on purpose. It has never happened. But there have been times where that miracle has just popped up and taken hold of me and moved me into a relationship that I never would have planned on. And it's happened a couple times. It's nice. This last one's doing pretty well. It's really hung on there. What we need, in the end, is a miracle. We need something from outside of ourselves to invade us and to become a part of us and change us from the inside out. And that's the imagery of the Eucharist. That the strength that we live by is food. It's things from outside of ourselves that we bring in. It's a little picture of just how life works. Your strength doesn't come from you. Your miracles don't come from you. Your love doesn't come from you. It comes from God. And this is an image of that. This is God in these symbols of bread and of wine. It's God saying, here, you need this. Take it and eat it, and I will make you strong. So when you come up to the tables in front, you can go to either. Take the bread and dip it into the wine and eat it. And remember what it is that real life is about, what the real world is about. It's about you receiving everything that you need from God. Come forward. The tables are ready. Let me pray before we do. Lord God, thank you for giving yourself to us because we need you very badly. Our ability to see the world is darkened. We can be full of fear. We can be full of sadness because of the things that we believe. And God, we believe in so many dark things. Thank you for coming and showing us the truth about the world and how good it is, how beautiful it is, how awesome it's going to become. Thank you for showing us ourselves in Christ and seeing how beautiful we are and how good and awesome we're becoming. There's no way we could know that without you. There's no way we could become that without you. So we're so glad that you're there and that you're here and that you're here to be in us and to give us strength and new life in your bread and in your wine. Bless us today, oh God. We are here for you, to create with you and to be with you forever without fear. Amen. The tables are prepared.